Okay, I see everyone that we need for our panel is here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And hopefully a few more folks will join us as we go along, and hopefully you can at least hear me, if not see me. All right, I just want to start off, of course, just thanking you all for being here. I'm Tizi Laughlin, State Senator for the 3rd District, and I serve as co-chair for the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity. This is the 2nd community town hall that we have held. It's the first that is virtual, and I'm glad to see familiar folks and unfamiliar folks online. We do ultimately want this to be a conversation, but we're going to start out with an update, and I'll just do a couple of quick pieces of housekeeping on my list here, just that we ask that folks mute if they're not speaking. There is an option for bilingual translated captions. It is under the More Options tab. That's a good reason to keep yourself muted. No one hear any of ourselves coming back in our own ears. And then, of course, we're also asking you to share input in the chat as we go. We are tracking that. I may not be personally tracking that, but we have a great team here. And also use the raise hand function on Zoom, so when we get to the community conversation that you're able to speak freely. We are recording this meeting, and it will ultimately be publicly posted for others to view who aren't able to join us tonight. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to introduce our leadership team who are serving sort of as the panel for tonight. I will just let each of them say hello in the hopes that, I don't know if our video will pop up or not, but if you want to just say hi after I introduce you. We have Matt Den, my Reading Consortium co-chair, former Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. Hey, Matt.
Hi, good evening.
We have Representative Nnamdi Chukwucha. He is a co-founder of the Reading Consortium with me as legislators and a leader specifically for the redistricting effort. Chukwucha, there you are. Great. We have Wilmington City Council member at large, Maria Cabrera, and she serves as a Reading Community Engagement co-chair and has gifted us with the use of City Council chambers as our anchor location tonight. So thank you, council member. And finally, we have Taylor Hawk, who's Director of Legislative and Political Strategy at DSEA, State Educators Association, our teachers union, who's representing the organization on behalf of Stephanie Ingram, who also serves as a co-chair for our Community Engagement Subcommittee for the Reading Consortium on our redistricting project.
Good evening.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit here to lay out some of our intentions. We'll share some of the vision that we've been working on for strong public schools in the city of Wilmington, but also in all of northern Newcastle County. That is our mandate. And a brief history of what redistricting has meant in and around the city of Wilmington, and then go over the process that we've been engaged in for many months and quite frankly years, when you include some of our other organizations that have predated us. Rep. Chukwucha will go more into that. Our primary intention tonight is that we really want to be engaging the community in a conversation, hearing from you about your values and your priorities, what you think great public schools in the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County, what does that mean to you? So that is what we are really all about. After we get done talking at you, hopefully we'll spend a lot more time hearing from you. Just for my own part, of course, I mentioned I'm a state senator and I'm a co-chair of this entity, but more importantly, on some level, I am a proud Wilmingtonian. I love this city, and I think it is the heart of our state. I am also a product of Delaware Public Schools, and those schools made me certainly who I am, and the educators who poured into me during my years, specifically in Red Clay, actually, and showed their love for me and the community and all of the students that they served have just been a real guiding light and important value that stuck with me. I'm also a parent of one child who's now graduated and gone on to college, but did all of her schooling in Delaware Public Schools, and another little tiny guy who just turned 3, who will also be entering our public schools soon enough. And I hope that all of us are in the room today because we agree that there's an incredible opportunity to forge a brighter future for our kids in Wilmington and Greater Wilmington and for the entire state. That strong schools are the foundation of our strong communities, and that everyone needs that foundation to be strong in order for our state to thrive. Of course, we acknowledge, and we're going to talk more about the past. We know the story of Wilmington schools and some of the concerns that plague Wilmington and Greater Wilmington don't start today. There's a past, but there's also not just a present, but a great future. There have been mistakes made in that past and painful results of decisions made. But I think our challenge for ourselves on the Reading Consortium, and I see a lot of our members here, but for everyone who's chosen to spend a beautiful evening on the computer with us, is to do what we tell our kids to do, to learn from the past, to keep our eye on the prize, that it's all about a brighter future for the kids, for the great city of Wilmington, and for Delaware. And I think all of the team who are with us believe that's very, very achievable. And this initiative through the Reading Consortium is just one part of building that. It's a big first step, and I'm very, very proud of the years of work that we've put in and where we find ourselves today. And, you know, but at the same time, you know, I think we have a lot more to learn. In my conversations that go all the way back to when I was a PTA leader in my daughter's school, I've been hearing this appetite for change and an increasing number of families of all incomes and all neighborhoods struggling to navigate our local school system as it's currently configured. And while that's problematic, I think it's also a huge opportunity. So thank you for caring enough to engage and be here with us, you know, as we work to make your vision, our vision into some concrete planning. And with that, I'm going to turn back to my talking point, and it's going to be very relieved. So as a reminder too, I want to make sure to give a shout out to the educational leaders from University of Delaware's Institute for Public Administration and Delaware State University, who are here as our staff members supporting the work of the Reading Consortium and helping to facilitate tonight's discussion. Let's see, what slide are we on now? Okay. So, you know, as I mentioned, I'm a huge believer in our public school system. I think we collectively agree that every child deserves a great school to attend, a high quality education that they will receive, and that should be regardless of where they live and what their background is. With this redistricting project, we want to be clear that we don't think it's solely about changing school district boundaries, but we do think that's an important first step in catalyzing change and bringing school communities together, and that this is part of a bigger plan to improve our schools and to support stronger, more connected communities. We want to make sure that all students have the opportunity to excel in school by expanding access to academic resources, to supports that better meet their needs, that many of you, particularly educators among us, have been telling us and asking for a long time. And our goal here is not about dividing the pie in a new way, per se. We're hoping that we can grow the pie through various ways to do that, to look at other opportunities for policy recommendations we can make alongside redistricting. Our vision for success is great schools in Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County. And we want to be able to meet the Reading Consortium's definition of educational equity. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the Reading Consortium is. We were established in 2019 through legislation by Representative Chikwocha and I, and really following in the footsteps of other entities that existed before, immediately before it was the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. And our job is to recommend policies and practices to the governor and to the General Assembly, of which we are members, to improve educational equity for all students. And when we first came together to meet back in 2019, we collaboratively came up with a definition of what even were we talking about with the term educational equity. With these, 20, 30 members of the group, what we managed to co-create was this definition that educational equity requires safe, secure, and student-focused learning environments where every student is intentionally provided access to the support, resources, and opportunities they need to reach their full academic and social potential in and out of the classroom. So it's a lot of words, but I would just challenge anyone to come up with something shorter with 30 people doing it all together in one room. It satisfied everyone at the end. So as I said, our goal is to improve academic and learning outcomes and social outcomes for students in pre-K through 12th grade in Northern Newcastle County and the city. We've been working on achieving these goals ever since we were formed. We've had recommendations already funded and implemented by the state and have continued to work with state agencies and community partners to improve educational equity. So redistricting isn't our whole thing. A lot of the other work that we've done doesn't necessarily get as much attention, but I'll just share a couple of examples of what we've done. We developed a model of full day pre-K, high quality pre-K for our youngest learners through the ECAP model. It's actually now been adopted statewide. If you want to know more about that, we'll be happy to give you more details. Does a lot of really good stuff, and we've expanded hundreds of seats just for Wilmington students alone. We've brought more supports to make sure that we can have in-school health centers and out-of-school time services for students at what we call the Reading schools in the city of Wilmington. And we also have established a very popular scholarship program for eligible City of Wilmington educators and staff in high needs schools to meaningfully address teacher recruitment and retention, which is a huge challenge that is ongoing. But yes, part of our core charge is working on redistricting in the city of Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County. We are mandated by the code to develop such a plan. It's outlined in Senate Bill 148 and House Bills 222 and later on 229, which talk about some of the more specific terms there. And we plan in all of the ways to continue to work to expand opportunities so that every student has access to a world-class education in great schools. So I'm going to turn things over to Representative Chakocha for a little bit, and he's going to provide a high-level overview of the history of redistricting and past efforts to inform the consortium's work today.
Thank you, Senator Lockman, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this evening to be a part of this. I mean, our goal is to really not only share, but also to gather feedback from our community as we continue to plan for redistricting. I wanted to provide just a brief history of redistricting some of our efforts within the city of Wilmington. And first, I would be remiss if I didn't thank our county councilman, Jay Street, for all of his work, having been with the Reading Consortium for many years, helping us to move this forward. And thank him for all he helped us to usher to get to this point as we continue to move forward from the work and he and so many others have brought to bear. Next slide, please. So currently there are 18 public schools in the city of Wilmington, and we serve roughly 11,000 students. And over the years, there have been many efforts, many groups from our school leaders, professionals in the community members working to try to improve our Wilmington school system. But yet it still has proven to be still very just complex and having many challenges and I would say also many opportunities for change for the city of Wilmington. Over the last 20 years, there have been an array of reports and commissions that have looked into education. And we know that this our current 4-district model, it all started when the Wilmington School District, when the city of Wilmington lost the school district between 74 and 78. And then we went into the Newcastle County Consolidated School District. And then from there, we ended up with this 4-district model that is currently serving the city of Wilmington. There created many divisions and also just gaps in providing quality, equitable educational services to the city of Wilmington and our students and families. And over the years, there have been many reports and commissions. A few of them are noted here. You see that the Neighborhood Schools Committee, which was led by Ray Avery, the Wilmington Education Task Force from Senator Margaret Rose Henry, and then Wilmington Education Advisory Committee from 2015, and then WIC following that in 2016. And then Reading came right after those. And again, it was our intent when we created Reading to try to have a very aggressive timeline and move this forward. And we realized then, since 2019, how challenging of a task it is to move this forward, because there are so many so many pieces to this puzzle, and individuals and organizations that have to be taken in consideration in terms of moving our schools, and also improving the voice and the inclusion for the city of Wilmington. Next slide, please. And this currently shows our current boundaries within the city of Wilmington, and you'll see our 4 districts with Brandywine in the green area for the north of the city, then Christina in the purple, and then Colonial and Red Clay. And also you will notice that in Christina being the non-contiguous district where they are based in the southern part of Newcastle County, but also they have that small portion of the city of Wilmington. And this boundary shows some of the division. And when you look at the city of Wilmington there, which is blocked out, Wilmington proper, you see the division of our city between the districts. And it really just shows and emphasizes the need for us to really come together and have a more unified city for governing our children, providing the governance and education for our children. Is something we've worked on, and many groups have presented visions and opportunities, but yet all of the plans that have been presented, unfortunately, none of them have made it across the finish line. Many haven't even received any legislative action. So we're glad to continue our work with Reading, pushing forward. And as Senator Lockman noted, it's not just about changing the district boundaries and moving, basically changing the color of one of the areas in our city. It's really about providing equitable educational system for the students in Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. So it's not just the district boundaries, but so many other in-school and out-of-school supports that are needed to support our children, families, and communities. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay. Our redistricting planning process. You can go ahead to the next slide. We did have an interim plan that we approved a year ago in May. That's probably one of the last big touch points that was publicly noticed, I think particularly that you might have read about in the newspaper. So on May 9th of 2024, that plan was approved by all of the members of the Reading Consortium, or by a majority of them. It was also affirmed by a resolution that passed through the General Assembly in June of last year. And the interim plan is really a framework outlining what the desired direction that a final plan might take. And what it spoke to specifically was the consensus that we were able to reach as a consortium on what a potential ultimate plan might look like. And that focused on the desire that the Christina School District be removed from serving the city, and that no more than 2 school districts would serve the city moving forward, so that we would see, you know, a redistricting or a consolidation into only 2 districts or less was the actual language that we used in that interim plan. So 1 or 2 districts governing the city of Wilmington schools. Some key areas of the plan include an 18-month timeline that we set for ourselves last May. So that's last May to this upcoming December, 18 months to develop a final redistricting plan. It also defined a subcommittee structure that we had to implement and that we have implemented, that we would have 3 working groups addressing what we call the 13 stipulations. So there's 13 very clear guidelines that have to be considered in a final plan that is in code as part of our mandate. And so these groups are each tasked with different components of those 13 stipulations to develop into the final plan. And that includes the operational impact subcommittee, the fiscal impact subcommittee, and a community engagement subcommittee. And we also included in that a requirement for ourselves to pursue a social drivers of health and education landscape analysis. So I'll repeat that again, a social drivers of health and education landscape analysis for the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. We're working now with the American Institutes for Research, or AIR, conducting a study about factors outside of school, like healthcare access, housing stability, access to after-school programming, things like that that impact students' educational outcomes. And lastly, but perhaps most importantly, we also outlined on a very, very high level some proposed big ideas for policy reform. So as we keep mentioning, this is more than about just changing lines on a map and signs on a building, as people used to say during the WEIC days. This is also about exploring some big picture policy reform ideas related to the implementation of education, right? Things like school funding, state investment in our schools, choice reform, things like that. So I'm going to hand it off to my co-chair, who is a great advocate for big ideas, to talk about some of the policies we elevated for consideration that we would also love your feedback on tonight.
Thanks, Senator. Do we have a separate slide that, oh, there it is. So as both Senator Lockman and Representative Chicocha mentioned, I don't think that any of us would be satisfied at the end of this process if the only thing that we recommended to the state was changing the district lines or changing the districts in which certain schools sat. So I think it's a given at this point that we are also going to want to recommend to the state some broader reforms in terms of what takes place in those schools, understanding that the quality of what's occurring in the schools is critical to having the students achieve how we want them to. So as Senator Lockman mentioned, there have been a few specific areas that we have tried to elevate for further discussion in the hopes of you helping us narrow them down for purposes of putting together our final plan. And here's sort of a short list of them. Some of them have to do with revenue policy, making sure that schools in whatever district they end up sitting have sufficient revenue to provide students with what they need. School choice, both with respect to charter schools and district coordination. And then this category in the middle, which is the opportunity to do some things in these schools, that are the focus of these efforts, that will really improve the quality of education that's offered to students, both students who live in the feeder patterns for those schools, and to the extent that there is excess capacity, students who might be so excited about what's going on in these schools that they might choice into these schools from outside the school district. And this includes expanding access to high quality early education programs for students before kindergarten age, trying to attract and retain some of the best teachers in our state by offering premium pay levels to teachers who will teach in these schools and make commitments to stay in these schools. Improving access to outside school time programs. And as Senator Lockman mentioned, this is an area that we've already been able to persuade the state to get into. And there are 3 schools currently in the city, Coomba, East Side Charter, and Bayard, that are offering extensive outside school time programs that are starting to show some real results for the kids who participate in them. So the opportunity to do that in even more schools. And then also discussion about having specialized magnet programs in some of the schools in the city. And those could include things like programs that were targeted at kids who were learning beyond grade level, who could use more challenging work, students who needed additional help, students with identified learning disabilities where higher quality programming could be provided to them, arts programming, coding. There are all sorts of possibilities for specialized programs that could be offered in some of the schools in the city that, again, would be great additions for students who lived in the feeder patterns, and also potentially magnets for students who lived outside the feeder patterns. So all of these things are possibilities, and we very much believe that some of them ought to be included in a final plan, and are eager to get your input about what you think about some of them. I'll pass it back to Senator Lockman.
Okay, next slide. So this is a little bit of what you can expect of the process timeline that I previously mentioned. This goes up to and beyond that kind of December final plan deadline. Where we are right now is conducting community town halls, and next week we will be having a full body meeting of the Reading Consortium around some decision points. We have not actually taken up any decision points up until this point especially as pertains to a redistricting plan moving forward. Next month, we will be having more of these, we hope. We'll be receiving an installation of our AIR report, the second that we will have received. We received the previous one at the subcommittee retreat that we had in April. I believe it was April. Was it April or March? The time has flown. It was in March. And we'll be having another one of those. So those are open to the public, and you're welcome to join us and participate in that. Subcommittees will continue to host meetings and will continue to receive additional information. And the expectation is that we will be in a position to hold public hearings on a final concept by the time we're in fall. And then, as you can see, there's other hoops to jump through as we work through all of the necessary decision points and public facing and internal deadlines to deliver a final plan, at which point, presuming we're able to vote up a final plan that also touches on all of the stipulations, that we will deliver that to the state board in December, and then they will have 90 days to consider it. And if they approve it, it goes on to the General Assembly. And if the General Assembly approves it, it goes on to the governor. So lots of opportunities for discussion and development and approval or not. I'm now going to hand it over to Councilmember Maria Cabrera, who is here to talk about community priorities and values. And that's really what we want to be the main thing of this evening. So, Les.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for all the work that everyone is doing on this committee and for all those who joined us this evening. We know your time is precious. We appreciate having you here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you in this next section. We're going to discuss community priorities and values. Your voice matters. We want to hear from you. We will have a 45-minute community conversation. We will discuss 3 guiding questions about co-creating a vision for improving public education. We're going to allot 15 minutes per question. We hope that everyone engages and be respectful in the process. Thank you. So the first question, community priorities and values, is, a few important reminders. This will not be the only time we gather feedback. There will be multiple opportunities to share your input at other Reading Consortium town hall meetings and events. No decisions have been made about changing school boundary lines. We are focused on hearing from the community about your values and key priorities. We will use this feedback to inform considerations about potential redistricting options. Please save any questions or comments about the process for the public comment section. We only want to engage with the questions that we're going to be asking, 15 minutes apiece. So we will save the process. We can talk about that in public comments. Thank you.
And next, I'm going to introduce the questions that will guide our conversation tonight. The first question is, what do you think makes a great school and a great school system? Can move to the second question. The second question is, what are educational resources, programs, or services that help meet the needs of all students? And finally, after looking at the list of big ideas in the approved interim plan, which ones stand out to you the most and why? How could these big ideas help schools to better support students? And again, at the bottom here are some examples of those big ideas for policy reform, including specialized magnet programs, high quality early learning for pre-K students, and premium pay for educators and high need students. And a reminder for attendees to use the raised hand function on Zoom or put your responses in the chat. And next, I'm going to kick it back to Senator Lockman and Representative Chukwucha, who will moderate and facilitate the town hall.
Thanks, Taylor. We appreciate you and you too, council member. So this is the part where we encourage you not to be shy, so you don't have to hear us talk more at you about these ideas. Would love to see some hands raised, or perhaps you want to put something in the chat that you wouldn't mind us sharing more widely. in answer to these questions. So we'll just start, we'll spend as much time as we need on the first broad question. We just want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of what you think are key factors, key qualities that make a great school, and also thinking broadly, if that's how you prefer to focus, on what a great school system or district looks like. So we will just let that hang in the air for a moment and ask you for your feedback. This is not unusual for this to start out slowly, but would dare anyone to be brave. But Rep. Chakotcha, Matt and I could certainly wax poetic on this for days. We will also be sharing other ways to collect feedback as well. Good, I see a hand. I appreciate you. But at the end, you'll see a QR code that will be shared widely. So if you think of things later, you're not an on-the-spot person, that's fine. You'll have ongoing opportunities to continue to answer these questions. Why don't we start with YF Liu, one of our board members in the Christina School
Oh,
District?
good evening. I do apologize about my informal attire. I just came back from a sports activity. So after serving for almost 2 years, one of the biggest obstacle and challenges and really opportunity for improvement still stands is how do we get improved parent engagement? Because there are many obstacles when it comes to engaging parents, whether it's transportation, whether it's childcare, whether it's socioeconomic obstacles, or whether it's language barriers. And a lot of the times, I see a lot of parents being turned away, not because of intentionally, but it's just very difficult to follow through on some of the information that's provided. And if we're able to kind of bridge this gap for communication, I can see a huge value add when it comes to improving schools, because then the parents can truly be an ally to the schools to really work together to support the student to be successful.
Thank you, parent engagement. I feel that one deeply. Good input. I see a couple in the chat that I think shares some energy with that, like let's see, a sense of community, connection to staff, students, and families, or connection among staff, students, and families. I also see an abundance of resources, including instructors invested in staying with the school for the long run. I think we know those resources can be connected to retaining those kinds of educators for the long run. Any other thoughts that people are having that you'd like to make sure are elevated? Okay, we see small class size. All right. I'll say, oh, okay. Student-centered, teachers and admins who are engaged. Thank you for this. All right, anything else? If something comes up as we move on to other questions, I think we'd be happy to circle back. We have time. I'm gonna let Rep. Chakotcha facilitate our move to question number 2.
Our question 2 is, what are educational resources, programs, or services that help to meet the needs of all students? And again, you can raise your hand or place your comment in the chat, but we would love to hear from you. And again, this is how we begin to formulate, carrying on this conversation and really putting the meat on the bones of our plan. It really takes all of us, and your input is very important and needed. Yes. Board Member Lou?
All right. Sorry, take all here. One of the programs that I've actually been following even before I was elected as a school board member is this program called Parent Camp. While it's not specifically because Parent Camp, the organization is successful, but the content and the information that they provide is important. So what I mean, so kind of going back to the first question about parent engagement, Parent Camp first and foremost addresses some of the barriers to parent participation by providing, dinner. They're also providing childcare, and then they're now looking into providing other obstacles potentially to prevent parents from participating, where they are bringing in the parents into the schools after hour and have like a group setting, kind of like a group perspective when it comes to parent-led discussions. So it's like a peer-led discussion where the parents come together and have these discussions and really share some of their challenges and really confide in. And it really kind of break down the barriers and break down some of that reservations of parents that want to participate and engage, but they're also kind of apprehensive to really come in. So that that's one of the programs, and really just like that model has been very effective in the schools that they brought in, because a lot of parents now are asking very critical questions on, hey, you know, asking the teachers and the principals like, hey, how can we as parents support you so the students can be successful? How can we help so you guys can be so that's those are one of the programs that I've seen that's relatively successful when to bring the parents into the discussion.
No, thank you. Appreciate that, and totally in agreement. The more we can have the parents engaged and involved in the educational process of their children, the better, not only for the schools, but also for the children, for the community, definitely. A couple comments I see came in. One about SEL, social emotional learning programs, and programs such as community schools programs. I know many on this call have heard me say often, and would think just reflecting on my growing up in Wilmington, in our former Wilmington school system, that I never attended the former George Gray School, which is now Thomas Edison Charter. But I remember being in that building so often for community programs. My sister did Girl Scouts, and there were so much other community programs going on in the community where our schools were they were the hub of our community. They were the hearts of our community. Truly, our schools mattered, and our communities really gravitated toward the schools. They weren't just for our children. They were truly living and learning places for our community, places where we congregated, places where we shared. And that to me is definitely a key point, and a lot of what you're well mentioning, board member Lou, about that, just that connection with the parents. To me, it resonates there. There are a couple other comments, adding inviting schools and classrooms, wraparound services and supports, health connections, high quality instruction, cultural responsiveness of our educating, and ongoing professionalism in training, uh, developmental specific for each school. I think that's definitely a key point, realizing that each one of our schools is their own unique environment. There is no blanket approach from one school to the next school. They are all just parts of their communities that they are from, and that needs to be recognized in this planning process. So thank you for sharing that. Any additional comments? Parent empowerment, absolutely engaging students in education. The more we can get parents involved, the better. And mentioned early childcare. I mean, the earlier we start getting parents involved, the greater it is, not only for the parent, but also for the student outcomes from our early learning centers all the way through to graduation. So absolutely in agreement. Yes, I see a hand from Miss Lavina Jones Davis from Brandywine. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I was thinking about really looking at the curriculum that exists throughout different districts and being able to embed something around appreciation and empowerment of our community. I think that it's important that we spend some time for children to understand and know the history of Wilmington community, the successes of that, so that they can duplicate some of that success. But it needs to be embedded into the curriculum and for them to understand the value as they grow up, the value of them getting involved, their involvement as children, just how critical it's not just going to school every day and learning reading and writing and math, but also the love and appreciation and the cultural involvement within the community, I think, should be embedded in the curriculum.
Absolutely. I mean, in agreement with that. I mean, so often our schools have to be the heart of our communities. And I think that sharing that our stories and where our schools are part of that story is not only for our children, but for our families and the community overall is a great way to put it. Absolutely. Another comment from Denise, making our schools more welcoming. Parents feel safe dropping their children off, knowing that it's the best place for them to be. And for the, just feeling welcome, parents themselves feeling um, that the school, that they are just as our educators, that they are also partners in their students, their children's educational process and their value for that. And for to increase the parent value is it goes on both sides. The more parents are engaged, the more students and teachers benefit, but also teachers benefit from having the parents there as equal partners as well. So it's really that two-way street. Another comment, community engagement nights, bonding, educational games, and family literacy nights. I know many of these activities take place and definitely help to build community within the school. So you can always continue placing your comments and suggestions into the chat. And again, at the end of our session, there will be an opportunity for that shows you greater ways in which you can share your information and that you would like to share. And I will turn it back over to Senator Lockman for question 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Some really great stuff in here. I really appreciate you guys. The third question gets a little more specific, but please continue to answer the broader questions as well. So we talked through some big ideas that we were exploring as important ones to attach to any redistricting proposal. And we can kind of put those into 3 broad buckets as you see on that slide. And I'll just break it down a little further now on this slide. So some of the things we've talked about are new revenue policies, such as referendum reform, the idea of moving away from referendum as a means to raise local funds. And we've also talked about reforming the Newcastle County tax district pool. That is highly technical. So I'm actually pretty sure we have a couple of experts on the call, but you guys don't have to speak out now. Other things related to, how revenue might be collected. And then also talking about some specific ideas for the types of investments we can be asking the state to make, particularly for the schools and districts that might be impacted by change here. But I think these are things that we would love to advocate for well beyond our borders as well. So that would include things like expanding access to high quality early learning programs. Think universal pre-K, something we've been talking about for many years and was mentioned by some of our superintendents that we've talked to over the last months as like something they think could be a real game changer in turning the tide for students who have not found as much success in our students so far. So the idea of pre-K or even go further back in time, birth to 5 opportunities. We've also floated the idea of supplementing premium pay to teachers working in schools that we see as higher needs. We've already done this a bit in the Christina Wilmington footprint. And then also, we talked about wraparound, more programming before school, after school, summer programs, ensuring that there's resources to support those things. And Matt mentioned the idea of looking at magnet programs, magnetization, specifically in the elementary schools, but I think we could talk all across the grade span, programs that will draw students to schools and across the system. And then I think we can also talk about just school choice in a broader sense as well. We've now had about 30 years of choice and charter policy in place, and, we've all experienced and participated in different ways with those policies. So we think there's an opportunity for us to talk about that and the impact that that has in the footprint of the districts that we're addressing. Should we be looking at school choice and charter reform? Magnets would fall under that category as well. And what are some opportunities or ideas that you all might have? So those are the ones that occurred to us and have kind of floated to the top for us. And we would love to hear from you. Green flags, red flags, ideas that we're missing. Any thoughts you might have on any of these kinds of ideas or more? I see some highlighting around revenue reform. And I think you nailed it. Yeah, we've definitely had that experience of it's one tax you can vote on, so it's not shocking that we take that opportunity, especially in this day and age, to decline to do that. Any other thoughts, ideas that we've mentioned that you think are really great, or maybe we should be rethinking? Okay. If you're feeling up to it, Ms. Huntley, I would love for you to speak more about what those kinds of special investments might look like, early intervention strategies for those of us who might not have as close of a relationship to that. If you want to tell us some
Yeah,
examples. Yeah.
sure. I can unmute myself and see whether I can talk about that a little bit.
Thanks.
I think what I have in mind is that there's enough attention paid to individual students that when they start falling behind in especially their reading, but also, of course, their arithmetic abilities, that they get extra assistance, whether that's tutoring or whether that's just group work or I'm not an elementary school teacher, so not an expert in what kind of interventions work. But it's just my impression that helping students early on in their early grades to stay on track and to be successful will help them enjoy school more and be more successful later on, instead of constantly feeling like they're behind and they can't really do it anyway. And I'm not good at this, so why should I even try?
Yeah. I'm sure we can all think of some very specific stories where we've watched that happen. You probably can think of dozens or more. I would love it if Kelly Green, would you be willing to unmute and talk about project-based education? I don't know if that would be sort of a magnet option or if you can talk more about what that means.
Sure, I definitely can. So I keep going back to Palmer Elementary, which was a school that Christina closed in Southbridge. And we had, I was the school counselor, and we were lucky to partner with Children and Families First as well. And we were able to receive an opportunity grant in which we integrated trauma-informed practices, had bicycles in the classroom, rocking chairs in the hallways, but we implemented project-based learning so that the classrooms were focused on different projects or themes. For instance, we had a multicultural fair, and every classroom took a country, and then we created a fair where everybody went around with a passport, and it was amazing how much the students retained and were engaged. And the families celebrated the events as well because they cooked food and made crafts. It was a very connection-oriented activity. And we had a different one every month. So it was very hands-on. We did a science themed night where all of the work leading up to it in the classroom was then shared with the families. And I think, getting back to using the body and the brain together can be really impactful.
Yeah, so maybe that's even more of like a curriculum framework. It sounds like expeditionary learning I'm familiar with. I feel like has that's the
Yes.
approach, right?
Yeah, and the other piece that the grant funded was we had field trips every month. So we took the kids to, the Franklin Institute, the Hearst factory. So again, it was very concrete. We also tied in careers with every, field trip we went to, and we invited parents to go with us.
Yeah. I
So
think talking about field trips is actually a big deal. I think sometimes we forget about that, or a lot of us take it for granted, but I know, there are times, and I'm sure there's folks on the call who could talk to it more, where it's just not an option for a variety of reasons, but how important that is to find ways to make it work. And I know we've even had legislation before us in Dover talking about how to make it more possible for schools, especially from like an expense perspective. So maybe that's something we can also add to our considerations. Anything else? I'm seeing more sort of like check marks on early interventions, helping kids feel that they are on track and belong in school and are making progress, more support for the ideas of early learning and or before, after, and summer care as equalizing. And I see a couple hearts on that one too. So some minor support on the revenue side. I'm seeing a lot on the investments piece. Any thoughts on school choice related items before we just sort of open it up to any remaining thoughts?
Tizzy, it's Kelly again.
Hey, Kelly.
So I love the idea of the choice schools and the charter schools. I guess one of my concerns was just how do we create diverse populations? And I think choice and charters are great ways to do that. My questions would like how transportation would work for that. So that would be the one thing I would, be curious about in your planning.
Yes, I think that's always been a question around school choice. And actually, it's one of our 13 stipulations is that we have to talk about the transportation aspect of anything that we're proposing. But thank you for that. We see people saying make it easy to go to a good school close to home. I agree, that's the ideal. And probably a big part of what success would look like in terms of a vision for stronger schools, but how can we help along getting to that point? And I think to Kelly's point, how can choice and charter policy, it's here to stay, I would venture to say. And how can those be part of leading to that, where every school is a good one? A strong one, I guess I'll say. I'm trying to get away from the good and bad framing. So those are some good concerns to flag. Anything else? Okay, well, I think I'll fall back from question 3 and see if we have anyone wanting to offer any additional thoughts on any of the three questions or anything else? Before we start to wrap up and go, we will have a public comment period, but that is total open season. And a great point made in the chat that without a strong and equitable revenue stream, all of these ideas will probably just stay in the idea phase. So we have to be able to pay for things and make sure we're paying for them for all students. Thank you for that. And as we mentioned, we will have additional ways that you can continue to offer inputs beyond this meeting. And I'll also say, you know, it's nice to have those of you on the call with us who are with us now, but we would also really encourage you to share this with others, with other educators, with other parents, anyone you know, students as well. Would love to have some students sort of coming to the end of their K-12 careers, help us think about the experience they had and how we can make it even better for the next generation of students. And, oh, let me see here. Right. Thank you for that. Making sure we have adequate resources for families experiencing homelessness. That's a major challenge. I don't know if I could say it's more today than it has been, but it feels like it. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to overlook a raised hand. It's actually a member. Go ahead, Tika. You almost don't even need to raise your hand.
No worries. Since you just mentioned sharing this information with others to join us and more parents, is there something that we can share with them for the next town hall? So is there a flyer or a link or a post or something that we can provide people?
Yes, absolutely. Let me see what I can, well, we have a slide outlining next steps. And presuming everyone has access to social media, although that might be a little dangerous, we have been posting a flyer that we have that lists all of that information. I think we've probably found one of the most helpful things you can do is to text that to people. So I'm trying to text it to as many people as I can and would encourage others to do the same. I don't know if we can link it in the chat or anything like that, or how we can we have everyone's emails.
Well, I think you just said if it's on social media, maybe download, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
PDF or a JPEG,
Yeah.
to try and send to people.
Yeah, I think it's a JPEG. You could just, screen cap it and send that on to folks from our Reading Consortium for Educational Equity Facebook page. I know it's there. I know some other entities have posted it, like Delaware PTA, and others.
Okay.
So
Lena has anything already, or any of the other staff have anything already saved or created to, if it's sent out, I can also share out and get it to other people to share out as well.
that would be awesome, because this Thursday obviously isn't going to be the last one we do, but we would love to increase the spread of awareness about the work and the opportunity to contribute to it.
Does
So
social media include a TikTok by any chance?
it does not. Are you volunteering?
Well, we can talk about it.
Okay. It's on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Okay. So as some of you may already know, we will be hosting an additional virtual town hall, 7 p.m. a little later on May 22nd. There is an anchor location, but as virtual meetings work, but I don't know how much you get out of it on being in person, but we will be physically at PS DuPont Middle School, but it'll be oriented towards a virtual audience. And then our next Reading Consortium meeting will be on May 27th. That's next Tuesday. That is going to be 6 to 8 p.m. on the Deltec Wilmington campus. also open to the public. We will be sharing some of the feedback that we've been hearing from you all there, and you'll get to hear about all of the business that's before the consortium at this time. And again, we're looking forward to scheduling more of these in June, so keep spreading the word, please. And we do know that our next subcommittee retreat, so a full day gathering to really dig into our planning work, will be taking place on June 14th. That is a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and welcome to stop by at any time. So oh, awesome. Thank you, Haley. I see that flyer appearing in the chat as we speak. So download that while you can and share it out. So that brings us to, unless no more hands or comments, to our formal public comment period. So if you're interested in offering a formal public comment, you can raise your hand. You will be allowed 2 minutes to speak your piece. We did ask if you had specific process feedback. This is a great place to offer that. And so we'll just leave it for a couple seconds to see if we get any hands. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Feel free to also raise your hand if others would like to step up as well. I see Jen and Dave Strauss. I think you
Yeah.
should be able to unmute.
Did you present the potential rezoning map yet?
No, that was not part of tonight's agenda.
Okay, is that for Thursday?
No.
Has there been discussion about rezoning the districts and?
Redistricting maps, we haven't taken any action on selecting one yet. I would expect that to be a part of the discussion of our consortium meeting next week.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for the question. I'm sure you're not the only one wondering. Any other thoughts? Okay. So I think we're going to call it. Thank you all so much for being here and offering your thoughts. We are making sure those are captured. And this is your link to the Post Town Hall feedback survey. You can also share that to others who hopefully will take some time to watch the presentation portion that we're going to post. And where will we be posting that? To YouTube? To the Reading Consortium website, it'll be cross-posted? Okay, on our Reading Consortium YouTube channel, so I would expect that'll be linked from our primary website, which is solutionsfordelawareschools.com. Encourage you all to go check that out. You can find out all kinds of things about the work that we have done and the work that has preceded us. And also our Facebook page. If you haven't already liked it, please get on there because we do share links to all of these pertinent things there. Or you can just screen cap that right now and get to the survey that way. And we will, again, continue to try to amplify that. Churches and community programs, I think word of mouth is going to be key. So any church or community program you are connected to, please send that on. Thank you all for being here. Have a nice night.